surreal scene playing out in southern Alberta. Tourists gem Waterton and area under fire.
Our crews were there working tirelessly all evening throughout the night.
Residents forced to flee, leaving everything behind, their lives and homes destroyed.
I wish I packed up the whole house, and I wish I would have took the horses.
It's a very scary thing.
What the province is doing to help and what's next for those who call this place home.
You're watching Global Calgary. This is Global News Hour at 6.
Good evening. It's what everyone feared would happen. The wildfire that started in BC has now spread into Waterton Lakes National Park. It is also threatening Pincher Creek and Cardston County. Tonight we have extensive coverage. Linda Olson joining us from Twin Butte with a closer look at how quickly the situation has changed and what officials are saying about the condition of Waterton's town site. Caitlin Wilson joining us from Pincher Creek with more on the size of the fire and where it's headed. And Jill Croteau looking at the growing anger and frustration from people saying there simply wasn't enough warning. But first, we begin with the heartbreaking loss one family is now facing. As the unthinkable has happened, almost everything is gone, their home, barn, and pasture destroyed by the fire. But as Quinn Campbell reports, the family refuses to be knocked down by Mother Nature.
When I came across that hill and I saw our ranch of so many generations burned to the ground, you can't imagine the horror that you see when you see your childhood home and all the work, blood, sweat, and tears of generations before you burnt to the ground. But we are lucky. We are lucky, and that's what we need to remember.
The Rocking Heart Ranch is located along the Waterton Lakes National Park's east boundary. In just an instant, it was all gone.
Not a mile, 100 yards. That's why we had to get out.
Jim Garner was helping a friend down the road when he was told the fire was coming.
I said, well, Jim, the fire's at the park gates. They said, it can't be. Parks had just sent us information. It was up at Cameron Lake. Little all did we know there was another fire going on. Nobody told us. We're coming back. I see the wall of fire by our ranch.
They had just loaded some possessions and were driving away from their beloved home when they were told to evacuate.
20 minutes to leave our ranch. We left 30 years of memories, 50 years we've been married, my wife and I, this fall, and we got 50 years of memory in there.
All of their horses, 100 in total, survived the fire and no one was hurt. But underneath that relief is frustration. How did the fire get so close before they were notified?
I want to compliment the men that are in the field fighting the fires. I will compliment them. I won't even comment about the others. I believe we need to have a public inquiry called by the Premier immediately as to this fire and why it got out of control like this.
While they wait for answers, it's business as usual. The Rocking Heart Ranch hosts a cold starting challenge every year. It's scheduled for this weekend.
The only way to rebuild is to keep moving forward. So that's what we've decided to do. We will move forward. We welcome everybody to come see us at the challenge. Because we are Garners, because we're part of this strong ag community, you will not keep us down.
Quinn Campbell, Global News.
The Keenan wildfire has burned various spots inside Waterton Lakes National Park and outside the park boundaries. At least one building has been lost. Caitlin Wilson is in Pincher Creek tonight with more on the growth of the fire. Good evening, Caitlin.
Hi, Scott. For hundreds who've been affected by the Keenan wildfire, it's been an emotional few days. Last night, the fire deep in the BC backcountry raced towards the Waterton town site, and what everyone feared became a reality. The fire has now grown to 20,000 hectares in size, last doubling from our last update. Monday night, it actually entered Waterton Lakes National Park, barreling past Cameron Lake, down the Akamina Parkway towards the town. We're told several outbuildings in the town burned, including the visitor center. Crews are working to protect the town site, including cabins and buildings, and we're told that their efforts so far have been successful. As the fire approached last night, a grass fire broke out near the park's entrance. We're told that it's caused by embers from the wildfire. Officials say they couldn't contain the fire until around 3:30 this morning when the winds settled down. Now, we are told that the fire has left the park boundaries, pushing east and north. It has prompted several evacuations in the past 24 hours, including parts of Cardston County, the municipal district of Pincher Creek, and the Blood Reserve. We're told that around 500 people have been asked to leave with others on notice. We're also being told that Cardston and the Municipal District of Pincher Creek have declared a local state of emergency. Scott?
Caitlin, the Premier speaking for the first time on this fire situation there. What is she saying about the firefight?
Yeah, she held a press conference this morning. She did give us lots of numbers, many of which we were hearing for the first time since our update yesterday. She told us there's around 135 firefighters on the ground right now. There's several helicopters in the air dropping buckets of water on the fire, with several more on standby. Here's what she had to say.
We're advised that efforts to fight the eastern border of the fire are likely to be more successful today, during the day, with the use of tanker and helicopter resources. That work is underway. The wind dynamics will determine whether the eastern border can be held later today. Additional evacuation alerts may be necessary as the situation develops.
Now, it's not as windy as it was Monday night, and officials are hoping that the rain forecast for Thursday will help slow the fire down. Back to you.
All right, thanks so much, Caitlin. A fire brigade has been set up at the hamlet of Twin Butte, about 90 kilometers southwest of Lethbridge. That's where we find Jill Croteau tonight. Jill, the other part of this story is some evacuees are saying they're upset with a lack of communication from officials.
Yeah, Scott, many say there was a big gap in the notification of getting people out. So there's a real sense of anger, anxiety, and really, quite frankly, some frustration brewing over how this whole evacuation was handled. But you talk to the people who witnessed this fire firsthand and the path, they said, you know what, it was just too fast, too quick to advance any warning of any kind.
The fire is now considered out of control.
Compelled to see it with his own eyes, Jared Pearson headed towards danger to witness how close the fire was to threatening homes and livestock.
We were getting pelted with a lot of ash, and I think the most surreal part of the whole experience was just the sound of the fire burning in the background, and then as the winds would blow, just the heat that you could feel. My truck registered, that it was 27 degrees, and it was 11 o'clock at night.
Many say a lack of information and barely any advance warning to the encroaching fire has been more than unsettling. But officials say the aggressive fuel of the winds made it unpredictable.
At about 10 o'clock, containment efforts of the grass fire were unsuccessful. The fire was on both sides of Highway 6 and progression through the grasslands outside of Waterton Lakes National Park. The wildfire remained active until about 3:30 a.m. this morning, when winds began to settle. As of 4:30, the wildfire remained very active on the hills around the town site.
An emergency alert alarm was on delay, which complicated the timely notification for those impacted.
We've certainly heard reports from people that there was a bit of a delay and or that the website needed more support, and so we've had conversations with officials in the provincial operations center in the POC to ensure that we increase the performance of the emergency alert system.
And for those who saw it all unravel firsthand, they know to never underestimate its unforgiving fury.
We had some really freak winds happen, and I think people probably felt they had it under control, and then it just went. And even when we got there, it looked like things were under control, and then all of a sudden it just ignited, and very quickly you could see that there was panic in the air.
Now, Alberta provincial wildfire officials say while they are tracking the trajectory of this fire, they're really not concerned or consumed with communicating those finite details of exactly where the perimeter is on this fire, because right now they're focused on fighting it and keeping the boots on the ground, keeping everybody safe at this point. Scott.
All right, thanks so much, Jill. The other part of this story, of course, is air quality. We'll bring Gemma in now to take a look at what's happening with some of the advisories and warnings out there. Gemma, what can you tell us right now?
Yeah, well, they're still in place. Waterton, of course, under that special air quality statement, stretches into the Lethbridge area and then eastward into Medicine Hat, Cypress Hills. So special air quality statement remains in effect. Of course, very thick smoke in those areas. As for those winds, 70 6-kilometer-per-hour gust into Waterton. That was very early this morning, but good news, that cold front is starting to move through, and current winds in Waterton are at 9 kilometers per hour, so they've definitely died down. Here's some better news. It looks like some precipitation likely, especially by Wednesday night, into that southwestern pocket of our province, lasting for a few days. So some good news, cooler air and some rain in our forecast.
All right, thanks, Gemma. One of the priorities right now for Alberta wildfire management, is the Castle Mountain area. That's where we're going to bring in Linda Olson now, who joins us live from Twin Butte. Linda, you talked to them just a few moments ago.
Yes, Scott, I did, and that's an area that they are focused on right now. There's a large spot fire, they're calling it, that they're fighting from the air, a lot of resources. We've been here, for the better part of the day, and the smoke is very thick here. Just in the last hour or so, from our perspective, I would say it's gotten a lot thicker and darker. It's almost like a wall covering the silhouette of the mountains behind us. You can smell it even more. But one of the advantages of some of that smoke, all this smoke you see, isn't just from the Kenow fire that's moved into this area, but also some other fires in BC. And it's sort of insulating the fire, making it less aggressive. And it certainly was aggressive last night when it made that shift. I talked to Leslie Lazinski from Alberta Wildfire Management just a short time ago about that and their biggest concern right now in the Castle Mountain area. Thanks so much for joining us tonight with an update, Leslie. Can you speak to your number one concern right now? What is the area that is the biggest threat that you're keeping an eye on?
All areas are important, of course, but we're looking at some pretty aggressive fire behavior in the Castle Mountain area, the South Castle area. The fire has crossed the border from BC, it's come across the top, and there is a spot fire of about 500 hectares currently in the Castle area. We were able this morning, before the smoke came in, to get an air tanker load on that before 9:30. And ever since that, we've had buckets working with helicopters with buckets working on that. So we had a heavy helicopter working in there until it got too windy. And then for the rest of the day, we've had medium helicopters in there bucketing. So you can see from the smoke behind us, it's pretty thick. We can't have any planes in the sky anymore. There's no air tankers working on this side of the fire. They're working on the other side of the fire currently. On this side, they can't see through the smoke, so we're working underneath the smoke with the helicopters to get that section of the fire stopped.
And can you talk about how quickly it spread last night? I mean, just to confirm some of the numbers that we've heard from the province, that it increased by 50% to 20,000 hectares.
It was an aggressive night last night. The winds were intense. That was extremely dry and it was warm. The temperatures today are a little bit less, so the fire behavior is a little bit less aggressive right now. It remains to be seen what will happen tonight. Winds tend to increase as we go into the heavy burning period. But yesterday it was extremely aggressive. That fire traveled very quickly.
Is there concern about the area that the fire is running through right now in terms of the terrain and some of the additional challenges that the crews might face?
Well, this fire in the castle is on Sage Mountain right now. If we can't keep it there, we have a dozer group in there making a containment line right now, which we hope would catch the fire. And worst case, it's going to get into the canyons, and that's going to be more difficult to fight in those canyons.
What kind of resources have you called out to fight this latest onslaught?
We're mostly fighting this one from the air. So we've got a component of different kinds of air tankers working on it. There's an Electra, there's 4 CL-215s here today. There's a number of helicopters, heavies, and other helicopters as well.
Thanks so much for your time.
You're welcome.
So, Scott, really zeroing in on some critical key areas, but lots of resources in the area and ready for anything.
All right, thanks so much, Linda. Well, the flames have also forced parts of the Blood Tribe to evacuate. Where people are being told to go also.
Look after your own place. Don't threaten everybody else.
Why residents from an Alberta town are blaming the Canadian Army for a fire that destroyed their homes. We're back in 90 seconds. The wildfire burning in southern Alberta causing more evacuations overnight. More people were forced from their homes on the Blood Tribe as the Kenow fire spread. Joe Scarpelli joins us now with more on this. Good evening, Joe.
Hey Scott, it was actually hundreds of people from the Blood Tribe that were told to get out last night. Officials say it was roughly 300 people that were told to get out, and so far about 180 of them have reported to their designated evacuation center in Standoff, Scott. And the evacuations are for the zones 1 and 5 of the Blood Tribe. Officials there began door knocking just after midnight, telling people get out.
Well, presently the evacuation notice is still on. It's mandatory. Some of them are getting ready to evacuate on their own. It's mostly the ones that didn't have transportation overnight that were brought here. And there's probably going to be more.
Now, Joe, you've been in the thick of this for days now, and certainly last night things took a turn for the worst, and we were live during the 11 o'clock news when some of this urgency started to take place. Talk a little bit about the last-minute notice that people went through and the urgency behind it.
Scott, I can actually still feel some of the adrenaline from last night. It was absolute chaos. Police, emergency vehicles flying by us. RCMP knocking on doors, evacuating residents. We came over here to the evacuation center filled with emotion, hugs, tears. You really, really felt for the people. It was quite something, Scott.
Thanks so much, Joe. Well, all of this smoke has led to a special air quality statement for southern Alberta. The effects for people outside and those in care facilities, plus.
But right now, I wish I packed up the whole house.
How evacuees are coping after being forced to leave everything behind. Thousands of acres of land have been destroyed by a grass fire near a hamlet about 3 hours southeast of our city. The fire, which is now under control, ignited last night near Bindloss. A local state of emergency remains in place there, but an evacuation order has been lifted. One elderly man who was rescued from his home lost everything. Here's Bindu Suri.
The roaring flames traveled quickly, scorching swaths of farmland in its path. The grass fire, about 326 kilometers southeast of Calgary, reached Morley Sarv's home. His neighbors rescued him just in time.
When they come up and got me out of bed, and I noticed it. Looked out the window and I noticed it.
Sarv's lost his home and everything around it, including 6 outbuildings. 3 of his tractors destroyed, along with 2 trucks and other farming machinery.
It's heartbreaking to lose something like that. Yeah, I took it over the farm over from my dad, and I've been farming here ever since.
40 residents whose 5 homes were in the fire's path told to make a run for it.
I actually have friends that are fighting the fire that actually called me and told me to get out.
More than a dozen, mostly volunteer fire departments joined the local municipality to fight the fire.
From some of the people on the ground was that they've just never seen a fire, just the way it moved in terms of speed and the scale was really something that they've never experienced before.
Several evacuees tell Global News they believe the fire started on CFB Suffield land.
They won't let us in there to fight a fire inside the block, but they won't look after it themselves.
The military exercise base will confirm there was a fire on base yesterday afternoon, hours before the grass fire raged out of control.
We did have a fire that started on base yesterday, subsequent to an operation to dispose of a piece of unexploded ordnance. It is possible that fire was caused by the fire that was on the base, but it is not conclusive.
At 89, Sarvis isn't sure if he can start over.
I just don't know yet what I'm going to do.
Bindu Suri, Global News.
Taking a look outside right now, a hazy day again here, Gemma, but we'll get back to Calgary in a second, focusing on Waterton, what's happening there. Some of the positive news, we're seeing the temperatures drop.
Yes, absolutely. Temperatures are dropping in central and southern Alberta. We'll definitely notice it here in Calgary starting tomorrow and then the next day in southern parts like Waterton and Lethbridge. So there's a low pressure system pushing through. You can see parts of central and southern Alberta already starting to see rain, including us. Special air quality statements still remain in effect, including Pincher Creek, Waterton, eastward through Lethbridge, Foremost, Medicine Hat, all included in that special air quality statement. There's the rain that's already pushing through at the Calgary International Airport. We are reporting some light rain showers right now. 15 degrees, wind from the north at 37. So those north winds are really starting to blow through. You can see Red Deer only sitting at 8 degrees, while Medicine Hat still at 23. Lethbridge sitting at 16 degrees. Take a look at our futurecast. So we are looking at rain showers in Calgary for this evening. No rain yet down in Lethbridge or Waterton or even into Medicine Hat just yet. But keep an eye on our futurecast. We are looking at that rain to continue for us for tomorrow, 15 to 20 millimeters off to the mountain parks, even some mixed precipitation likely. The greater chance of precipitation for Lethbridge, Waterton area would be tomorrow night into Thursday. Now look at that. Much needed moisture moving through and some cooler temperatures with that, and that will continue for a couple of days and then ease up there by Friday. For tomorrow in Calgary, we're only aiming for a high of 9 degrees. We have the rain showers starting now that will continue overnight into tomorrow, and some pretty strong gusty north winds. Calgary's high tomorrow 9, 18 for Medicine Hat, 14 for Lethbridge, so you can see that cooler air really starting to move through with that cold front. And here's your forecast for the next 7 days. Only 8 to 9 degrees for the next 3 days, then back up to 15 to 17 by Sunday and Monday. Normal for this time of the year is 18.
All right, thanks so much, Gemma. We'll continue to talk about those conditions. The poor air quality in the south continues to be a major concern for health officials. Now, not just for people spending time outdoors, but also for those in health facilities. Heather York's joining us now. Heather, in some of these cases, visitors are actually being asked just to simply stay away.
Yeah, Scott, for the simple reason that health officials don't want the doors to these hospitals and care centers opening. They want to keep them as closed as much as they can. There are hospitals in both Pincher Creek and Cardston, as well as a number of long-term care facilities in that area. AHS says there is evacuation plans in place for all facilities should the need arise. So far, though, it hasn't. The primary health concern right now is the smoke, and for those fine particles that can cause problems, especially over a long period of time.
There's large pieces of particles that kind of go into your upper respiratory tract, causing primarily irritation, cough, and symptoms. And then there's smaller particles that can go deeper in the lungs. And those smaller particles, if you're exposed to them over a long period of time, can cause longer-term health issues.
So when air quality is poor, people in the area are being urged to stay inside. Those working outdoors should be wearing those appropriate masks. AHS also concerned about the mental health of those in the area, especially the evacuees. Anyone who's experiencing distress or anxiety should call HealthLink to access mental health support. Scott?
All right, thanks so much, Heather.
You're welcome.
The Calgary Fire Department continues to help with the wildfire efforts. Their main job is to protect the Prince of Wales Hotel and a couple of other historical buildings in the area. The department says it's always ready based on a request from Parks Canada. It's a long haul, and the first 17-person team that left on Friday is now being replaced with a fresh crew. That happened this afternoon.
The first couple of days down there, I can tell you they were largely 14-hour days. The shift that's coming back this afternoon have worked pretty much 24 hours straight.
Initially, the Calgary Fire Department was told to be prepared to be in Waterton for a week or a little more. Right now, the chief says that still remains the time frame. Taking a live shot right now at the area that we're talking about. What kind of damage is expected to still carry out? Where is this fire headed? We're going to go back to live to Linda Olson, who will update us on the situation that's still ahead. As we've been talking about throughout the evening, the Keenan wildfire continues to grow, and so does fear from those forced to evacuate their homes because of it. Doug Vason hearing from evacuees who are taking refuge in Pincher Creek.
They got out, but were shocked by what they had to leave behind. Evacuees of the fast-moving, voracious fire, they fled fearing the loss of their homes and livestock.
We had a meeting on Friday. They said, you know, pack up your valuables and all that, which we did. We packed up some pictures and stuff, but you don't want to pack up the whole house because then you're going to have to unpack it. But right now, I wish I packed up the whole house. And I wish I would have took the horses to McLeod or somewhere So it's a little bit frustrating.
It's been busy at the evacuation center at Vertical Church, where Pastor Chris Ney was up all night comforting those who needed help.
Some people came in and were here, filled out the paperwork, and then started fumbling about, like it almost started just coming to them about what the situation really was. Other people came in just a mess. Life was, I mean, everything they had was literally at stake or at a loss in a moment's notice. And what do you do in that moment? What do you grab? What do you take? How do you deal with those things? Those are the kind of things we're able to help people walk through as they came in last night and probably will continue to do here in the community for some time.
Don Bressler woke up at 2 a.m. by RCMP banging on his door.
I thought something crazy's going on. I staggered outside to the front in my shorts, and there was the police were out there, a lady policeman and a gentleman policeman. And they said they were evacuating Twin Butte. I figured, man, what have I got of value that I want to keep just in case the place does burn up, because there's a lot of tall grass around our place. So then I grabbed 8 paintings off the wall of my original paintings, and then I grabbed my 2 Martin guitars, and I grabbed my all my songbooks. I write my own songs, and I had about 15 songbooks, and grabbed my Bible, a few pictures of my wife and the kids and stuff and that.
Bressler spent the night in his car, but friends showed up to give him a hot meal and a soft bed. Pastor Ney says if there's one positive to all this, it's the way Pincher Creek has responded, lending a helping hand to any who needed it. Doug Vason, Global News.
We're going to go back now to Linda Olson, who's at the fire barricade, at Twin Butte. Linda, you just spoke with Parks Canada. You have an update on what's going on there. What can you tell us?
Well, Scott, the concern, and this has been emphasized by everybody that we've talked to today, the concern first and foremost is people and their well-being. That was stressed, and the evacuation plan has been carried out. But also, of course, there's concern about the jewel of Waterton. I talked to Natalie Fay from Parks Canada about the firefighting efforts in the Waterton town site a little while ago. Thank you so much for joining us today, Natalie. First, can you tell us where the fire is right now? Because we have received information from a map from the U.S. Forestry Service that it had gone into the town of Waterton. Can you speak to that?
Yes, of course. So yesterday evening, the Keno wildfire did establish itself well into Waterton Lakes National Park. Now, we had done extensive facility protection within the town site in the days leading up, so we were very well prepared for this, and our crews remained in town overnight tirelessly working to protect the town site, and it seems that those measures have been holding. So the town site remains intact at this time with minimal damage.
And what was the damage to the visitor center just on the outskirts of town?
Yes, so there has been infrastructure outside of the town site boundary that has been impacted, including the visitor center.
So it hasn't gone any further into town as far as you can tell? It hasn't reached further?
At this time, the latest information I have is that our crews are still working to protect those facilities, and the town does remain primarily intact.
We also have heard on social media that some people are saying the golf course behind the hotel is on fire. Is that a concern for you? Are you familiar with what's happening there?
So right now, today, our focus was really doing an on-the-ground assessment to get a good picture of what's happening. Because as you know, a lot of this activity happened overnight, so it really limited our options in terms of operations. So today, our crews have been working out there all day, getting an assessment of things. So I don't have a full list. I can't confirm what's happened at the golf course at this time, but we are working to get that information out as soon as possible.
As you can imagine, there's a lot of stress and concern by residents who've been evacuated, so much uncertainty. Can you speak to the concerns that some of them have had about notification and it being delayed, that they were surprised to get a knock on the door in the middle of the night?
Of course, so I know from a Parks Canada perspective for Waterton, we evacuated last Friday, and we have been putting information out daily. We completely understand, this is a very trying time for everybody. This is an extremely difficult situation. Our thoughts are certainly with everybody, park staff, the crews, the community, and residents adjacent to the park. So we've been working our best to get information out there, and I know Parks Canada staff were out last night with the RCMP, knocking on doors and helping with the evacuation.
Thank you so much, Natalie.
Thank you.
So firefighters are working very hard on this fire in the Waterton area and, of course, outside it, working long hours through the smoke and the ash. Even around us now, there's lots more ash falling down on us. Several RCMP officers and firefighters setting up behind where we are located in the Twin Butte area. Lots of offers of support coming in. The Nanton Fire Department is accepting donations of non-perishables, water, electrolytes like Gatorade, granola bars. Also, the Pincher Creek SPCA is asking for food, litter boxes, blankets, those kinds of things to help animals who've been displaced. So lots of effort to support all those who are doing great work here just to keep everybody safe. Scott?
Some important information there for sure. Thanks so much, Linda.